The old Victorian mansion stood silhouetted against the bruised twilight sky, its gables like jagged teeth against the fading light. Locals whispered its name, Blackwood Manor, with a tremor of fear, claiming it was cursed, a place where shadows danced with lives long gone. For Sarah, a paranormal investigator with a reputation for debunking even the most persistent hauntings, it was just another case, albeit one with an unusually high volume of terrified testimonies. She had arrived that afternoon, the gravel crunching under the tires of her Jeep, a stark contrast to the unnerving silence that clung to the estate. The air was heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth and something else, something metallic and faintly sweet that she couldn't quite place. Inside, the mansion was a labyrinth of dust-sheeted furniture and echoing silence. Moonlight, fractured by the grimy window panes, painted stripes across the decaying grandeur. Sarah, armed with her EMF meter and a healthy dose of skepticism, began her methodical sweep. Room by room, she documented the stillness, the lack of any discernible paranormal activity. Hours passed, the only sounds her own footsteps, and the occasional creak of the old house settling. Just as doubt began to creep in, maybe this was just an overactive local imagination, she found it. In the library, tucked away on a high shelf behind a collection of leather-bound first editions, was a talking book, not in the metaphorical sense. This book spoke. It was a thick, obsidian volume, its cover unadorned save for a single, silver clasp shaped like a serpent devouring its own tail. As Sarah reached for it, a voice, raspy and ancient, echoed in the silent room. "Do not touch." Sarah froze, her heart hammering against her ribs. She scanned the room, her flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. No one. The voice had seemed to emanate from the book itself. Hesitantly, she reached again. This time, as her fingers brushed the cold leather, the serpent's eyes on the clasp seemed to glow with an inner light. Curiosity, a dangerous path. The voice was clearer now, closer. Sarah, a seasoned investigator who had faced down supposed poltergeists and spectral figures, felt a genuine prickle of fear. This was different. This felt real. Ignoring the warning, a thrill of morbid fascination overriding her caution, she pulled the book from the shelf. It was surprisingly heavy, its pages brittle and yellowed. As she opened it, the air in the room dropped several degrees, and the metallic sweet scent intensified. The pages were filled with a script she didn't recognize, intricate symbols that seemed to writhe and shift under her gaze. As her eyes scanned the strange text, a whisper slithered into her mind, a language she didn't understand yet somehow felt resonating deep within her. Suddenly, the silver serpent on the cover uncoiled slightly, its tiny, jeweled eyes fixing on her. "You have awakened me." The voice was no longer just in the air. It was inside her head. Panic flared. Sarah dropped the book as if it were a burning coal. It landed on the dusty floor with a soft thud. The serpent clasp now fully uncoiled, its silver form gleaming in the moonlight. She backed away, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The room felt colder, the shadows deeper, more alive. She could feel a presence, something ancient and malevolent, stirring within the very walls of Blackwood Manor. Over the next few days, the mansion became a vortex of unsettling phenomena. Doors would slam shut on their own, whispers echoed in empty corridors, and Sarah would catch fleeting glimpses of shadowy figures in the periphery of her vision. Her equipment malfunctioned constantly, the EMF meter spiking erratically in areas where there should have been no electromagnetic field. The talking book remained on the library floor, the silver serpent a silent, watchful sentinel. Sarah tried to avoid it, but it seemed to exert a strange pull, a morbid curiosity that gnawed at her resolve. One particularly stormy night, as thunder rattled the old window panes, Sarah found herself drawn back to the library. The book lay bathed in an eerie green glow, the serpent clasp pulsing with a faint light. Hesitantly, she approached it. This time the voice was softer, almost seductive. "Pick me up, read my words, understand my power." Against her better judgment, Sarah reached for the book again. As her fingers closed around its cold cover, a jolt of energy surged through her. Images flooded her mind, rituals performed under a blood-red moon, chanting in a forgotten tongue, and a terrifying entity bound within the pages of the book. She recoiled, dropping the book once more. The green glow faded, and the serpent lay still, but the images remained, imprinted on her mind, chilling her to the bone. She now knew this was more than just a haunted house. This was something far more sinister. Driven by a desperate need to understand what she had stumbled upon, Sarah began researching the history of Blackwood Manor. Local archives yielded fragmented tales of a dark cult that had once resided on the land, their practices steeped in forbidden magic and the summoning of ancient entities. The book, she realized with growing horror, was likely their grimoire, a vessel containing unimaginable power. Days turned into sleepless nights as Sarah delved deeper into the manor's history, the oppressive atmosphere growing thicker with each passing hour. She felt watched, a constant awareness of something unseen lurking just beyond her perception. The whispers grew louder, sometimes forming coherent words, chilling pronouncements in a language that felt both alien and intimately familiar. One evening, while exploring the dusty attic, Sarah discovered a hidden chamber behind a false wall. Inside, on a crumbling altar, lay a series of strange artifacts, bone carvings, tarnished silver instruments, and a collection of scrolls covered in the same unsettling script as the talking book. As she examined the artifacts, a wave of dizziness washed over her. The whispers intensified, swirling around her like a suffocating cloud. She felt a cold presence behind her, a breath on the back of her neck that sent shivers down her spine. Turning slowly, she saw it, a figure, tall and gaunt, its form shifting in the dim light, its eyes burning with an unholy red glow. It reached out a skeletal hand towards her, its touch like the icy grip of death. Sarah screamed, stumbling backward, knocking over a stack of ancient tomes. The figure lunged, its movements impossibly swift. She scrambled to her feet, adrenaline coursing through her veins, and fled the attic, the terrifying figure hot on her heels. She raced through the darkened corridors, the whispers echoing in her ears, the presence closing in. She could feel its cold gaze on her, its hunger palpable. Reaching the library, her sanctuary turned prison, she saw the talking book lying innocently on the floor. The figure emerged from the shadows, its red eyes fixated on her. Cornered, with nowhere left to run, Sarah's gaze fell upon the open pages of the book. The strange symbols seemed to pulse with a faint energy. In a moment of desperate inspiration, a memory flashed through her mind. A passage from one of the ancient texts she had found. A mention of a counter-ritual, a way to banish the darkness. It involved a specific incantation and a pure heart. Sarah knew she wasn't pure, not in the traditional sense. She carried the weight of past mistakes, of doubts and fears. But in that moment, facing unimaginable terror, a core of unwavering resolve ignited within her. She would fight. Ignoring the menacing figure advancing towards her, Sarah knelt before the talking book. Focusing all her will, she began to recite the unfamiliar words from memory, the ancient syllables feeling strangely right on her tongue. As she spoke, the symbols on the pages began to glow brighter, the air in the room crackling with energy. The red glow in the figure's eyes flickered, its menacing form wavering. The whispers turned into shrieks of fury. The silver serpent on the book's cover began to writhe violently, its jeweled eyes blazing with a blinding white light. The light intensified, engulfing the room, and Sarah felt a surge of power flow through her, a warmth that pushed back the encroaching cold. The gaunt figure recoiled, its form dissolving into shadow, its shrieks fading into a terrified whimper. The oppressive presence in the mansion seemed to lessen, the air growing lighter. As the white light subsided, Sarah lay on the floor, exhausted but alive. The talking book lay open beside her, its pages still glowing faintly. The silver serpent was still, its eyes now radiating a gentle, calming light. But something had changed. The book no longer felt malevolent. It felt different. As Sarah reached out a trembling hand, the serpent nuzzled against her fingers, its touch surprisingly warm. And then it spoke. The voice no longer raspy and ancient, but clear and melodious. You have shown courage, where others have only known fear. You have awakened not a demon, but a guardian, bound by darkness, waiting for a worthy heart to break the seal. Sarah stared at the book, her mind reeling. A guardian? Bound by darkness? The serpent on the cover shifted again, its form elongating, rising from the pages. It transformed into a magnificent silver serpent, its scales shimmering in the moonlight, its eyes like twin stars. For centuries I have been imprisoned within these pages, forced to whisper fear, to protect myself from those who would exploit my power. You, Sarah, have seen beyond the darkness. You have the strength to wield the true power within. The silver serpent lowered its head, its gaze piercing yet gentle. The darkness here is not entirely vanquished. There are still echoes, remnants of the cult's rituals. But now, you are not alone. Just then, a faint sound echoed from the hallway, a child's whimper. Sarah's head snapped up, her fear returning. There was no mention of a child in any of the local lore. The silver serpent turned its luminous gaze towards the sound. A lost soul, trapped by the lingering shadows. It is why I could not fully break free. It is time, Sarah. Time to truly understand the miracle within these pages. The serpent glided towards the doorway, beckoning her with a flick of its tail. Sarah, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and a burgeoning sense of hope, followed. The suspense hook? The source of the child's whimper. Is it a ghost, a lingering spirit, or something far more sinister, connected to the dark cult and still trapped within Blackwood Manor? And what is the true miracle hidden within the talking book, now seemingly a benevolent guardian? This is just the beginning. The real terror and the true miracle are yet to be revealed. The silver serpent, its scales catching the faint moonlight filtering through the grimy hallway windows, led Sarah towards the sound of the whimpering. It emanated from a room at the end of the corridor, a room Sarah hadn't yet explored. The air grew colder as they approached, a damp chill that seeped into her bones, carrying with it the faint, metallic sweet scent she had first noticed upon arriving. Hesitantly, Sarah followed the spectral glow of the serpent into the room. It was a nursery, frozen in time. A rocking horse stood motionless in a corner, its painted eyes staring blankly ahead. A collection of antique dolls lay scattered on a dusty rug, their porcelain faces cracked and eerie in the dim light. The source of the whimpering was a small, ornate crib draped in cobwebs. Peering inside, Sarah saw a child, no older than 5, curled up and trembling. His face was pale and gaunt, his eyes wide with a terror that mirrored her own. He was translucent, his form shimmering like heat haze, and yet, impossibly, tears streamed down his spectral cheeks. "He is bound to this place," the silver serpent whispered, its voice resonating in Sarah's mind. A tragedy from the manor's dark past. His life was taken here, a sacrifice to their unholy rituals. His spirit cannot find peace. Sarah's heart ached with a sudden wave of empathy. This wasn't just a haunting, it was a profound injustice, a child trapped in eternal fear. "Can we help him?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. The serpent turned its luminous gaze upon her. The power within the book, it can sever the bonds that hold him, but it requires a true act of selfless love, a willingness to embrace the light within. Sarah looked at the talking book, which had followed them into the nursery, resting silently on the floor. The silver serpent on its cover now pulsed with a soft, warm light. She understood. The miracle wasn't just about banishing darkness. It was about healing, about setting free those who were unjustly imprisoned. But how? She had faced down fear, but selfless love. That felt like a far greater challenge. As if sensing her uncertainty, the spectral child looked up, his tear-filled eyes locking onto Sarah's. A silent plea passed between them, a desperate yearning for release. Driven by this profound connection, Sarah reached for the talking book. As her fingers touched the cover, images flooded her mind once more, clearer this time. She saw the child, his name was Thomas, laughing and playing in the sun-drenched gardens of Blackwood Manor. Then the vision shifted, twisting into a scene of terrifying ritual, hooded figures chanting around an altar, and Thomas, his small body trembling with fear. The final image was the nursery, the same room she was in now, but filled with the chilling darkness, and Thomas, fading. The book pulsed in her hands, its warmth spreading through her. The silver serpent coiled around her wrist, its touch comforting. "You must show him the light, Sarah. Show him the love that was stolen from him." Taking a deep breath, Sarah knelt beside the crib. She reached out a hand, and though her fingers passed through his spectral form, she focused her intent, pouring all her compassion, all her desire to help him, into the gesture. "Thomas," she said softly, her voice filled with the tenderness she hadn't known she possessed. "It's all right now. You're safe. You don't have to be afraid anymore." Her words seemed to ripple through the spectral child. He flinched, his wide eyes still filled with terror, but a flicker of something else, curiosity, appeared within them. The silver serpent unwound itself from her wrist and glided towards Thomas, its luminous form casting a gentle glow. It circled the crib, its silent presence radiating peace. He has known only darkness and fear for so long. The serpent's voice echoed in Sarah's mind. You must show him the opposite. Show him the warmth of life, the beauty of peace. Sarah looked around the dusty nursery, her gaze falling upon the rocking horse. Slowly she reached out and gently set it in motion. It creaked back and forth, a small, comforting sound in the oppressive silence. She began to speak to Thomas, her voice soft and soothing. She told him about the world outside the manor walls, about the sun and the stars, about laughter and joy. She described the vibrant colors of a blooming garden, the warmth of a loving embrace, the simple pleasures that had been denied to him. As she spoke, the spectral child watched her, his terror slowly giving way to a fragile wonder. The shimmering of his form seemed to stabilize, his translucent features becoming slightly more defined. The silver serpent continued to circle the crib, its light bathing Thomas in a gentle radiance. Sarah could feel the power of the book flowing through her, not as a surge of raw energy, but as a warm, comforting presence, amplifying her emotions, lending strength to her words. Hours seemed to melt away as Sarah continued to speak, her voice unwavering, her heart filled with a growing love for this lost child. She sang him lullabies her grandmother used to sing, her voice a little shaky at first but gaining strength with each verse. Slowly, miraculously, Thomas began to respond. A faint smile touched his lips as she described a field of sunflowers. His eyes widened with wonder as she spoke of soaring birds. The tension in his small, spectral body seemed to ease. As dawn began to paint the sky outside the grimy windows with hues of pink and gold, the silver serpent turned to Sarah, its eyes filled with a profound light. The bonds are weakening. He feels your love, Sarah. But one final act is needed. You must offer him a piece of your own light, a memory of pure joy. Sarah closed her eyes, searching within herself. Her life hadn't been without its darkness, its share of pain and loss. But there were moments of pure joy, moments of connection and love, that still shone brightly within her memory. She focused on one such memory. A Christmas morning spent with her family, the warmth of the fireplace, the laughter, the feeling of unconditional love. She poured that memory, that feeling, into her outstretched hand. A soft golden light emanated from her palm. Hesitantly, she reached towards Thomas. This time, as her hand passed through his spectral form, the golden light enveloped him. He gasped, a sound like the gentle rustling of leaves, and his translucent form began to glow with the same warm light. The terror in his eyes was completely gone, replaced by a look of pure peace and wonder. He reached out a spectral hand, and this time, when Sarah touched it, she felt a fleeting warmth, a connection that transcended the physical realm. The silver serpent rose into the air, its light intensifying, and began to chant in a melodious language that resonated deep within Sarah's soul. The light from the serpent and from Thomas intertwined, filling the nursery with a radiant glow. Slowly, Thomas's spectral form began to dissipate, not with fear or pain, but with a gentle sigh of release. The golden light swirled around him, carrying him upwards, towards the first rays of the rising sun. Sarah watched, tears streaming down her own cheeks, but these were tears of joy, of profound relief. The nursery felt lighter now, the oppressive atmosphere gone. The rocking horse stood still, no longer eerie, but simply a forgotten toy. The antique dolls seemed less menacing in the soft morning light. The silver serpent descended, its luminous form now solid and warm to the touch. It coiled around Sarah's arm, its gaze filled with gratitude. You have done it, Sarah. You have freed him. The darkness that clung to this manor for centuries has been broken by the light of your heart. Sarah looked at the talking book. Lying open on the floor, the silver serpent on its cover was still, its light now a steady, comforting presence. She understood now. The miracle wasn't just power. It was compassion, empathy, the courage to face not only external darkness, but also the shadows within oneself. But as the last vestiges of the night receded, and the full light of day flooded the nursery, Sarah noticed something else. On the dusty floor beside the crib, where Thomas had been, lay a small, tarnished silver locket. It was intricately carved with the image of a blooming rose. Hesitantly, she picked it up. As her fingers brushed against the cold metal, a faint image flashed in her mind. A young woman, her eyes filled with love, placing the locket around a small child's neck. Thomas's mother. A new understanding dawned within Sarah. The talking book hadn't just held a guardian. It had held a key, a catalyst waiting for the right heart to unlock its true potential. The darkness of Blackwood Manor hadn't been entirely malicious. It had been a prison, trapping not only a powerful entity, but also the lingering pain and sorrow of a tragic past. As she held the locket, a whisper, soft as a summer breeze, echoed in the room. "Thank you." Sarah knew it was Thomas, his spirit finally at peace. But the story of Blackwood Manor wasn't entirely over. As she stood in the now peaceful nursery, a new sensation prickled her skin. A faint, lingering coldness in a corner of the room, a subtle shift in shadows that felt different. Not malevolent, but watchful. The silver serpent on her arm tensed slightly, its luminous eyes fixed on the same corner. "The echoes remain," it whispered. The cult's influence was deep. "There are other remnants, other lost souls." Sarah looked at the corner, her initial fear replaced by a sense of determination. She had faced the darkness and found light. She had freed one lost soul. Perhaps, with the guardian by her side, she could free others. But as she took a step towards the shadows, a faint, almost imperceptible sound reached her ears from downstairs. A soft, rhythmic ticking, like the mechanism of an old clock, but somehow wrong. The silver serpent's grip on her arm tightened. Its luminous eyes widened slightly. A flicker of something akin to concern? That sound, it is a sign. Something else stirs within these walls. Something older. The suspense hook for part 3? The mysterious ticking sound and the silver serpent's reaction. What ancient and potentially more dangerous entity is still lurking within Blackwood Manor? And what role does the ticking sound play in its awakening? The miracle of Thomas's release may have brought light, but it seems to have also stirred something far more ancient and unknown from the depths of the Manor's dark history. The true test of Sarah's courage and the full extent of the talking book's power is yet to come. The rhythmic ticking pulsed through the silent house, a steady, unsettling beat that seemed to vibrate in the very bones of Blackwood Manor. It wasn't the comforting tick-tock of an old grandfather clock. This was irregular, almost organic, with pauses and accelerations that sent a shiver of unease down Sarah's spine. The silver serpent, now a constant companion coiled around her forearm, turned its luminous gaze towards the hallway. That sound, it heralds something ancient, something that predates even the cult, a presence woven into the very fabric of this land. Sarah felt a knot of apprehension tighten in her stomach. The release of Thomas had brought a sense of peace, but this new development felt like a step back into the unknown, a deeper layer of the Manor's dark history being peeled away. Together they moved cautiously out of the nursery, the silver serpent's gentle glow illuminating their path. The ticking grew louder as they descended the creaking staircase, each step echoing in the oppressive silence. It seemed to be emanating from the oldest part of the house, the cellars that Sarah had briefly glimpsed but hadn't yet explored. The cellar door, a heavy oak slab studded with rusted iron, was slightly ajar. A sliver of darkness yawned within, and the ticking was now a distinct, almost frantic pulse. A faint, earthy smell, mingled with something acrid and metallic, wafted from the opening. "Be wary, Sarah," the serpent whispered, its voice a low hum in her mind. "What lies below has slumbered for centuries. It's awakening. It will not be peaceful." Sarah pushed the door open, revealing a steep, stone staircase leading down into the black abyss. The air in the cellar was thick and heavy, the ticking now a palpable vibration against her skin. The silver serpent unwound itself from her arm and floated ahead, its light cutting through the Stygian darkness. The cellar was a labyrinth of damp stone walls and vaulted ceilings. Strange symbols, unlike those in the talking book, were etched into the walls, glowing faintly with an inner luminescence. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and something else, something ancient and mineral, like the scent of undisturbed earth from millennia ago. The ticking led them deeper into the maze, past crumbling shelves that once held forgotten stores, and rusted chains hanging from the ceiling. Finally, they reached a large, circular chamber in the heart of the cellar. In the center of the chamber, resting on a raised stone dais, was the source of the ticking. It wasn't a clock, but a large obsidian orb, pulsating with a faint internal light. Strange, vein-like patterns crisscrossed its surface, and it was these patterns that seemed to be emitting the rhythmic pulse. As they approached, the ticking intensified, and the symbols on the walls began to glow brighter. The air crackled with an unseen energy. This is the heart of the manor's power," the serpent murmured, its light focused on the orb. "It is a conduit to something primordial. The cult likely drew their dark magic from it." Suddenly, the obsidian orb began to spin, the ticking accelerating into a frantic rhythm. The vein-like patterns pulsed with an eerie green light, and the symbols on the walls seemed to writhe and shift. A low growl echoed through the chamber, a sound that seemed to emanate from the very stone beneath their feet. Shadows began to writhe and coalesce in the corners of the room, taking on vague, menacing shapes. "It awakens," the serpent hissed. "We must be quick." As the shadows solidified, Sarah saw them, grotesque figures with elongated limbs and glowing red eyes, their forms vaguely humanoid, but twisted into nightmarish parodies of life. They moved with an unnatural swiftness, their silent advance more terrifying than any scream. "What are they?" Sarah whispered, fear gripping her anew. "Guardians," the serpent replied, its light flaring, bound to the orb, protecting it from those who would disturb its slumber. "They are manifestations of its ancient power." The grotesque figures lunged, their skeletal hands reaching for Sarah. The silver serpent shot forward, its luminous form striking the first of the creatures, sending it hissing back into the shadows. "The orb is the key," the serpent called to Sarah. "Its power must be neutralized, or these shadows will overwhelm us." Sarah looked at the pulsating obsidian sphere. It radiated an aura of immense power, both terrifying and strangely compelling. How could she neutralize something so ancient, so potent? As the shadow creatures pressed their attack, the serpent weaving a protective barrier of light around her, Sarah's gaze fell upon the strange symbols etched into the walls. They pulsed in time with the orb, their forms mirroring the vein-like patterns on its surface. An idea sparked in her mind, a risky intuition based on the fragmented knowledge she had gleaned from the talking book and the artifacts in the hidden chamber. The symbols, they weren't just decorations. They were part of a language, a form of binding, a way to control the orb's power. "The symbols," Sarah exclaimed. "They're connected to the orb. If we can disrupt them." "It is a dangerous gamble, Sarah," the serpent warned, deflecting a clawed hand that lunged towards her. "But we have little choice." While the serpent kept the shadow creatures at bay, its light searing them when they came too close, Sarah moved towards the walls, tracing the glowing symbols with her fingers. They felt strangely warm to the touch, vibrating with the orb's energy. As she touched one of the symbols, a jolt of energy surged through her and an image flashed in her mind. A group of robed figures chanting around the orb, their hands raised in arcane gestures, their voices weaving a spell of binding. She realized then, the symbols weren't meant to control the orb directly, but to channel its power, to direct its primordial energy. To neutralize the orb, she had to disrupt that channeling, to break the connection between the symbols and the source. But how? She didn't know the language of the symbols, the intricacies of their power. Looking at the obsidian orb, still spinning and pulsing with that eerie green light, Sarah focused her intent, drawing upon the same wellspring of selfless love that had freed Thomas. She wasn't trying to control the orb, but to soothe it, to sever the ties that bound its raw power to the darkness. She reached out a hand towards the wall, not touching the symbols physically, but focusing her will, her compassion, onto them. She imagined the light that had emanated from her hand when she helped Thomas, that pure, golden energy flowing into the ancient script. As the golden light touched the symbols, they flickered, their eerie green glow momentarily dimming. The ticking of the orb stuttered, its frantic rhythm faltering. The shadow creatures hissed, their forms wavering as the energy that animated them fluctuated. The serpent, sensing the shift, intensified its attack, its light now imbued with the same golden hue. The shadow creatures, weakened and disoriented, began to dissipate, their menacing forms dissolving back into the darkness. But the orb continued to spin, its green light now pulsing erratically. The growling from beneath the floor intensified, and the chamber began to tremble. "You are disrupting the connection, Sarah," the serpent said urgently. "But the orb's core, it is still active. It senses our intrusion." Suddenly, cracks began to appear on the surface of the obsidian orb, spiderwebbing across its pulsating form. The green light intensified to a blinding glare, and the ticking morphed into a high-pitched whine that pierced Sarah's ears. The ground beneath them bucked violently. Dust and debris rained down from the vaulted ceiling. The ancient power of the orb was destabilizing, threatening to unleash unimaginable chaos. "The final binding, it must be broken," the serpent cried, its light focused on the dais beneath the orb. Sarah looked at the dais. Etched into its surface was a final, larger symbol, a complex sigil that seemed to be the anchor point for all the others. It pulsed with the same malevolent green light as the orb. Without hesitation, Sarah lunged towards the dais, ignoring the tremors that threatened to throw her off her feet. She placed both hands on the large sigil, focusing all her will, all her love, onto it. The golden light from within her surged outwards, flooding the sigil. The green light fought back, a malevolent energy clashing against her pure intent. Sarah gritted her teeth, pushing harder, drawing upon the memory of Thomas's peaceful release, the warmth of the silver serpent's trust. The sigil began to crack, the malevolent green light sputtering and fading. The high-pitched whine of the orb dropped in pitch, becoming a low, mournful hum. The violent tremors subsided. Finally, with a sound like shattering glass, the large sigil on the dais broke apart. The obsidian orb on top of it went still, its internal light fading to a soft, gentle glow. The vein-like patterns on its surface dimmed, the frantic ticking silenced. The chamber fell into an eerie stillness, broken only by Sarah's ragged breathing and the soft hum emanating from the now dormant orb. The shadows in the corners remained still, no longer animated by malevolent energy. The silver serpent glided to her side, its light bathing her in a comforting warmth. "You have done it, Sarah. You have silenced the heart of the darkness." Sarah looked at the still orb, a sense of profound exhaustion washing over her, mingled with a fragile sense of triumph. The ancient power that had fueled Blackwood Manor's terror for centuries was finally subdued. But as the dust settled and the silence deepened, a new sound reached their ears from somewhere deeper within the cellars. A faint, rhythmic dripping, like water falling into a dark abyss. It was a sound without malice, without the frantic pulse of the orb, but it carried a sense of something else, something unknown, lurking even beneath the primordial power they had just faced. The silver serpent turned its luminous gaze towards the source of the dripping. Its eyes, usually filled with a gentle light, now held a flicker of something akin to curiosity mixed with caution. "That sound, it comes from the deepest part of the cellars, a place untouched by the cult, undisturbed for eons." The suspense hook for Part 4? Mysterious dripping sound from the unexplored depths of the cellars. What could be lurking in that ancient, untouched place? Is it another entity? A source of power even older than the orb? And after facing down primordial darkness, what new and unknown terrors await Sarah and the silver serpent in the hidden depths of Blackwood Manor? The silence may be a temporary reprieve, but the manor still holds secrets waiting to be unearthed. Secrets that may be far more ancient and far more dangerous than they could possibly imagine. The rhythmic dripping echoed through the stillness of the neutralized chamber, a soft, persistent sound that drew Sarah and the silver serpent deeper into the ancient heart of Blackwood Manor. The air in this unexplored section of the cellars felt different, cooler, heavier, and carrying a scent that was neither earthy nor metallic, but something akin to petrified wood and still water. The silver serpent, its form now radiating a steady, inquisitive light, led the way through a narrow passage that sloped downwards. The stone walls here were slick with moisture, and strange, bioluminescent moss clung to the crevices, casting an eerie blue glow. The dripping grew louder with each step, resonating with a deep, almost subterranean hum. The passage opened into a vast cavern, the ceiling lost in shadow high above. A subterranean pool stretched before them, its surface as still and black as polished obsidian. The rhythmic dripping came from a stalactite formation at the far end of the cavern, where water droplets fell into the silent pool, creating ripples that spread outwards like dark secrets unfolding. As they ventured closer to the pool, Sarah noticed strange formations rising from its depths, smooth, black obelisks covered in intricate carvings that seemed to writhe in the faint blue light. They were unlike any symbols she had seen before, older and more alien. "This place, it feels primordial," the silver serpent murmured, its light illuminating the strange obelisks. Untouched by the cult, perhaps even predating the manor itself, the air grew heavy with a sense of ancient power, different from the raw energy of the orb. This felt more sentient, more aware. Sarah felt a prickling sensation on her skin, as if unseen eyes were watching them from the depths of the pool. Suddenly, the surface of the water rippled, not just from the falling droplets, but from something moving beneath. A shape began to rise from the depths, slow and silent. It was immense, its form vaguely serpentine, but far larger and more ancient-looking than the silver serpent. Its scales were the color of deep water, shimmering with an internal luminescence that matched the glow of the moss. Its head was broad and flat, with large, unblinking golden eyes that fixed upon Sarah and the silver serpent. A wave of pure, unadulterated fear washed over Sarah, more profound than anything she had felt in the manor before. This was not a malevolent guardian or a lingering spirit. This felt like encountering something truly ancient, a being that had witnessed the eons unfold. The silver serpent tensed beside her, its light flaring defensively. "Stay behind me, Sarah. This is a guardian of a different kind, one that has slumbered for millennia." The massive serpent rose further from the pool, its immense length coiling out of the dark water. It made no sound, its golden eyes simply observing them with an ancient, inscrutable gaze. "Can it understand us?" Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. "I do not know," the silver serpent replied, its focus entirely on the colossal being before them. "Its thoughts are like the slow turning of ages, difficult for my kind to comprehend." After a long, unnerving silence, the colossal serpent finally moved. It lowered its massive head towards the silver serpent, its golden eyes blinking slowly, like distant suns setting. A voice echoed in Sarah's mind, not a whisper like the talking book, but a deep, resonant tone that seemed to vibrate through her very being. "You are not of the shadows." The voice was ancient, carrying the weight of untold ages. It wasn't threatening, but held a profound sense of observation. The silver serpent responded, its mental voice clear and respectful. "We have come to quiet the darkness that disturbed this place. We mean no harm to what slumbers here." The colossal serpent remained still for a long moment, its golden eyes fixed on Sarah. The darkness, it was a wound upon the land, a festering that has now been eased. A sense of cautious hope flickered within Sarah. Perhaps this ancient being was not hostile. "You carry the light within you," the colossal serpent continued, its gaze still on Sarah. "A small spark, but pure. It has touched the ancient heart." Sarah felt a strange connection to the immense creature, a sense of being seen, not as an intruder, but as something significant. "The orb?" she asked mentally, directing her thoughts towards the ancient being. "Was it part of you?" The colossal serpent rippled slightly in the water. "A facet, a focus, a way for the younger ones to tap into the deep currents. But its time has passed." A sense of understanding washed over Sarah. The obsidian orb wasn't the source of the manor's ancient power, but merely a tool, a conduit to something far older and more profound that slumbered beneath. "Why are you here?" the colossal serpent finally asked, its mental voice echoing through the cavern. "Now that the wound is eased, what is your purpose in this ancient place?" Sarah looked around the silent cavern, at the strange obelisks rising from the still pool, at the bioluminescent moss casting its eerie glow. She thought of Thomas, finally free, and the lingering echoes of other lost souls within the manor. "There are still others," she replied mentally, her voice filled with a newfound resolve. "Lost souls, trapped by the darkness that once held this place. I want to help them find peace, as Thomas did." The colossal serpent was silent for a long moment, its golden eyes seeming to peer into the very depths of Sarah's soul. A compassionate heart, a rare thing in the fleeting lives of the surface world. It lowered its massive head again, its gaze now focused on the silver serpent. "Your kin, it has been long since one walked these depths with such purpose." The silver serpent inclined its head respectfully. The balance must be restored. The echoes of pain must be silenced. The colossal serpent rose slightly from the water, revealing more of its immense length. Etched along its scales were the same ancient carvings that adorn the obelisks, glowing faintly in response to its movement. The path to healing is not always clear. The echoes cling to this place, woven into its very stone. To release them, you must understand their stories, the roots of their pain. It paused, its golden eyes once again fixing on Sarah. The talking book, it holds fragments of these stories, but its whispers are often shrouded in fear and misunderstanding. You must learn to listen to the deeper currents, the silent language of this land. A sense of a new purpose settled within Sarah. The mystery of Blackwood Manor wasn't just about banishing ghosts. It was about understanding its history, its pain, and ultimately healing its wounds. "We are willing to learn," Sarah replied, her mental voice now steady. "We want to help bring peace to this place." The colossal serpent remained silent for a long moment. Then slowly, deliberately, It dipped its massive head into the still pool. The ripples spread outwards, and as the water stilled once more, the ancient being was gone, vanished back into the silent depths. A sense of profound stillness settled over the cavern. The bioluminescent moss cast its eerie blue glow. The dripping continued its steady rhythm, but the oppressive atmosphere had lifted, replaced by a sense of ancient watchfulness. The silver serpent turned to Sarah, its luminous eyes filled with a newfound understanding. The path ahead is long, Sarah. The echoes are many, their stories complex. But we are not alone. The ancient guardian, it will guide us in its own way. As they turned to leave the cavern, the rhythmic dripping seemed to change, its pattern subtly shifting, as if the ancient heart of Blackwood Manor was now whispering its secrets, waiting to be heard. The final suspense hook, the colossal serpent's cryptic guidance, and the subtle shift in the dripping sound. What are the deeper stories of the lost souls trapped within Blackwood Manor? How will the ancient guardian guide them? And what new, unforeseen challenges will they face as they delve into the silent language of this land? The mystery of the manor has deepened, hinting at a history far more ancient and complex than they ever imagined. And the true miracle may lie not just in banishing darkness, but in understanding the echoes of the past.